All right, we're going to be talking about dry brush in this tutorial. Similar to palette knife, if you've already watched the palette knife, or vice versa. But with dry brush, it's just what it sounds like. Your brush is too dry. So typically, if you would use this technique in any other style of painting, I would say, hey, you're doing it incorrectly. You need more water in your brush. But in this case, it's part of the charm of it. All right, so a lot of times dry brush will be incorporated or used alongside some of these, excuse me, some of these other techniques. So you may want to kind of do a little bit of broken color on top to build some of your areas. So I'm gonna quickly kind of go through here and add a little bit of tone and different colors just so I can see what I'm doing here. My paints are starting to dry out, so I'm gonna get even more dry brush. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna paint some different values in here. So you might wanna do this just because it, like I said, dry brush, you're not putting a lot of paint on. So I'm gonna go ahead and do some shading and modeling here. Just so I've already kind of built up my values a little bit. Still working with overlap. You're still dealing with overlap. Okay. So we've got some shadows and highlights in here. Now we're going to go through and do that dry brush technique. Dry brush is meant to kind of just put texture and add some visual interest to it. So, much like I said before, dry brush is usually a bad technique you don't want to do, but when you're trying to do it on purpose, it's kind of like breaking the rules when you know what the rules are. So you actually probably want one of these kind of bad brushes, the ones that I would normally tell you don't use, the ones where the bristles haven't been taken care of and it kind of looks like it has crazy bedhead. Those ones work great for this because the bristles are nice and separated. I also would tell you, you don't want water. So start with it dry or mostly dry, and I'm just going to kind of show you, I'm going to add some highlights using the dry brush, but you're going to want your brush loaded, but not a lot. You don't want a ton on there because the idea is you want to be able to see those individual kind of hairs on the brush. And it's kind of acts like hatching, cross-hatching, or stippling. So that's kind of the easiest way to think about it. But you want to be able to see those bristles. You want to be able to see the difference in, and you can go down to a smaller brush if you need to. I got a smaller crazy haired brush here to do some of these. I'll kind of show you close up in the camera here in just a second. So again, thinking about it like hatching, cross-hatching, and stippling is probably the best way to approach this. I'm going to start doing the leaf a little bit just so I can, again, I want to be able to show you what this technique looks like when it's kind of finished. Now you will have to clean your brush out if you want to change colors, which I do. I want to change colors here. But then I'm going to take and make sure I'm drying that brush off really well. I want to soak up all the excess water. Oh, we're going to pretend that didn't happen. All right. Get off as much paint as I can. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do some of those highlights. I'm going to grab that. And again, you might need to let it dry in between or zap it with a hairbrush. Zap it with a hair dryer. And then you're going through and putting that bristle marks in there. I'm being a little too impatient here. It's blending a little more than I want it to, just because I'm trying to get this finished in one session with you. All right. All right, so I'm going to bring this up to the camera and hopefully you can see. So dry brush, you should see those individual bristles. You can see that in there. So it's really capturing the texture of the canvas And you can get even more of a dry brush technique if you're more patient than I was and you let those layers dry before you do more layers on top. Excellent work, artists.